Deci încă n-ai văzut. Te pară, na. Wednesday. Yeah.
It's on. Okay. Hello. I'm very sorry we have lost our speaker, so yeah, while I can tell some jokes while we are waiting, maybe somebody else is good at telling jokes. Well, I can do some advertising time while we are waiting for Martin. So why are we making those events? Because this is our way to giving back to the community in Riga. I think we are very lucky with the type of investors we have got at Printify, and we are very lucky that they are flying in, they are spending time with us, doing some mentoring and tutoring, so we can at least share 1 hour of their time with the rest of the people, whomever are interested. Also, this is opportunity for us to tell who we are and what we do. So for those who don't know, we are a platform that does print on demand, so connecting suppliers on one side and connecting thousands of merchants on the other side that are selling those products. We are growing quite fast. We were in October celebrating the 100 people in our team. As of today, I was told that we are already 126 people, and by this evening we are already 127. As one more person signed a contract 40 minutes ago. Vegans, where are you? Yes, thank you. So Vegans will be leading our sales and partnerships and support. And yes, we have found Martin. Let's welcome Martin Henk.
I'm just putting my phone on silent. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the delay.
Well, you're living in Madrid, Lisbon these days, and coming all the way to Riga. I know the first thing when I met you this morning, it was like, damn, it's cold.
Yeah, it is cold. I am originally from Estonia, so kind of it's not that big of a surprise, but I still wasn't kind of wearing proper clothes for this climate. But it's been nice. It's kind of winter is good.
Winter is good. Okay.
Kind of in small doses, obviously.
Is there still something that you like better in Baltics than Portugal?
Well, summers are so much better. Kind of, yeah, nothing beats the summer in Estonia. So kind of, we have lived
in Latvia too.
It's same. So yeah, we have lived in many different places over the years, but we always come back to Estonia for the summer. So kind of, yeah, no better place for that time. Obviously, many things better in the Baltics compared to the rest of the world, especially when it comes to digital. Kind of all kinds of government services, that kind of stuff. You get really spoiled, and then you kind of, I was really surprised moving to Silicon Valley, the kind of where all of the technology kind of was invented and none of it is used really. So it was really strange. I wrote my first check in the Silicon Valley and it's like, what is that? So yeah, we're kind of definitely really spoiled by kind of a really good level of kind of digital. We're ahead of most of the world for sure here.
So to clarify for everyone, the evening format, we will have a short 10, max 15-minute chat with Martin, just to learn more about his background, where he's coming from. Meanwhile, please start thinking about questions you would like to ask Martin, because Martin will use that beautiful whiteboard right there to write down your questions and then go through one by one. So Martin has how many? 10 years of experience with Pipedrive, right? 9 years.
9 years and change, and then kind of a couple of failed startups before that. So
Can you share more about, because it's always like, I did this company, huge success. There are also founders in this room and startups are hard. So can you share some of your earlier days? Like what did you do before Pipedrive?
Sure. So in 2004, I was in college. We started a startup with some friends that was doing online bookings for beauty salons and group training places. And was a really interesting experience where it went into zombie mode pretty quickly. The company is still around. It was definitely a failure in many ways, but kind of the company is still around. They still have 20 customers. We used to have 20 customers pretty much kind of the whole time we were running it, and then kind of one by one all of the other founders dropped off, and then I had an exit of kind of giving it away for free at some point. And I think they still have 20 customers, so it's kind of and it's been 15 years. The customers have changed obviously, but the number stays the same. So that was an interesting experience of kind of everything you can do wrong. And not getting the company to grow at all. Then I joined United Dogs and Cats at some point, which was a social network for people that really like their pets. And kind of that was another interesting lesson in kind of a failed startup that was starting to grow and then failed, where I think we got kind of almost 500,000 registered users at some point. And then it went bankrupt.
So that was like Facebook for cats and dogs.
Yes, it was a social network for pets. It was a really good idea at the time. It seemed, in many ways, because kind of this habit for people to kind of upload a lot of cute pictures of their pets kind of really blew up, and also all of the pet companies, pet food companies, and pet kind of all kinds of merchandise companies really needed a place to kind of advertise their stuff. It was a match made in heaven until kind of the 2008 happened, and kind of no one wanted to advertise anything. And we also kind of messed up in many different ways, and that's why the company went bankrupt. But we again learned a lot from this experience. We also then tried to build a project management tool with part of that group. And that didn't go anywhere either, but kind of through that, we kind of happened on the two salespeople that were kind of, that ended up being Pipedrive. So
by failing the social network for cats and dogs, that led you to building a world-class CRM.
Yes.
For those who don't know, Pipedrive has more than 90,000 paying customers all over the world, and by now you have 600 employees, right? And
something like that.
And that's in Estonia, Portugal, New York.
So London.
So 5 offices all over the place.
There's an office in Prague. I think there's now an office in Dublin, and I think one in
Is
Florida
it like a
as well.
target for you to open more offices?
It must be a target for someone. Someone has an OKR, like open another 3 offices and kind of as remotely as possible from Estonia. So something like that.
You proudly say on your LinkedIn that you are retired now. Was that like your ambition to retire early, or did it just somehow happen?
Yeah, it wasn't kind of really a plan to retire, or kind of more like a burnout at some point. So yeah, about a year ago, I left Pipedrive. I was kind of really burnt out, really tired, and couldn't do it anymore. So I left, and I didn't call it a sabbatical because I didn't have an end date to it. So kind of I called it retirement. In the back of my mind, I was sure that I would get tired pretty quickly of kind of being retired and get bored and try to do something again. This hasn't happened yet, which was surprising. I thought, yeah, by September for sure I was so bored that I will kind of start 3 new companies, but I haven't. So taking it slowly, kind of now I feel my energy kind of slowly coming back. So kind of here I am speaking to a room full of people and kind of interacting more again. So kind of, let's see what's going to happen. But yeah, so far doing a little bit more angel investing and stuff like that, but kind of mostly enjoying my life in Portugal.
So if you have an amazing startup, you can try to catch Martin and pitch him your idea.
Yeah.
One of the things that often are told that is like a key problem for startups to fail is that they have too many founders and that making decisions are really hard. And I think what Pipedrive stands out from the rest is that you had 5 co-founders.
Yep.
So how did you make that work?
Yeah, it raised a lot of eyebrows, especially in the beginning, and it's not ideal, definitely. Kind of, if you can not do it, don't do it. But for us, somehow, magically, it worked. It shouldn't have, because we're all really different, kind of 5 people, kind of completely different. But it worked out, and I think we think that it was because we went to the sauna a lot.
So a lot of important decisions made there?
A lot of important decisions made there, a lot of kind of tensions released, beating each other up with the whisks. But basically what happens in a sauna is you don't have the energy to keep up the appearances. So most of the time people go through life having a mask on and kind of keeping up this act, like I'm like this and I'm like that. But if you're in a sauna, there's kind of 90 plus degrees and you're kind of desperately trying to survive and you're also naked, then kind of you don't really have that energy to keep up these appearances. And especially in the early days during the startup, the first couple of years when it was really tough and stuff wasn't growing and kind of we didn't know what we were doing, it was really beneficial to go to the sauna together regularly and kind of figure shit out and then come back kind of cleaner and more rested and kind of on the same level again. And somehow it worked out. Obviously, there are many problems with 5 people, difficult to make decisions. You're diluted kind of into a kind of really small share from day one. But for us, it was kind of useful, beneficial, and otherwise, kind of, I can't think of a Pipedrive working as it was working kind of without any of these 5. So we all contributed in some specific way, and we were all needed. And also kind of, it was good because 4 founders have left the company by now, and there's still 1 left. So it's kind of like, yeah, you have a kind of a longer bench.
Perfect. I will give the floor to you guys so you can ask the questions. This is really your time to ask whatever questions you have to Martin. You have a lot of experience, especially like what to do right and what not to do. So please.
Yeah, and you can ask anything kind of about product, about startups, failures, successes, kind of investing, whatever.
Hi.
Hi.
I wanted to ask about the early days of when you were starting off and you had less than 50 people. I wanted to know about how your structure was. Did you have a particular hierarchy? And eventually, probably, you came up with a different structure. So I'd like to know how did it change and why did you change it?
Okay.
Particularly if you could elaborate on development. I'm not sure if that's your area, but it would be great.
Yeah, I held kind of several roles during these 9 years. So I started out as the technical lead, and then I ran support for 3 years, and then rest of the time I ran the product department, which grew kind of only the product one grew from kind of 4 people to more than 40. At the same time, engineering grew from kind of like 10 to 200. So yeah, I saw a lot of that going on. But let's kind of gather all the questions, and then kind of I'll start answering them.
Hi, Brandon from Sinus. I would like to ask about early stage. What the stage when you are only you coding, for example, and besides founders, you need to take, your first developers. What's your let's say suggestions or fuck-ups you had with hiring the first developers or
Okay.
hiring?
Okay. Okay, first devs, right?
Okay, I want to ask about the late stage or later stage. When did you finally found out that Pipedrive will be a success, and what was those product-related decisions that made it?
Okay. When success.
And product decisions. Or product.
Okay.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
So I have a question about marketing strategy. When you already have a good product, because we also have already a product which has won competition and even prizes internationally, and we have very high conversion rate, about 90%, but we, like our digital marketing completely sucks currently, because it's not so easy to get to partners, because you also have like resales partners, etc. And it takes a very long time, and how to reach this customer like sooner. What are those success factors in this digital marketing for you, or maybe other marketing strategy? What you would recommend?
Okay. Not the best person to ask about that, but I do have some opinions at least, and some stories.
Also, actually, you said you learned a lot from your failures, most likely. Maybe if you could share those key learnings that was most important for you.
Okay. So.
Was there any? I heard that there were the early days were not easy. So when you went to sauna and meeting, was there any turning point in the company? What was it?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I would like to ask the question about how do you understand that you are trying to ride a dead horse and it's time to change something. So the question about the change strategy and how to understand that it's the project not gonna fly off and what to do then.
So kind of when to pivot and when to persist.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good topic. So what's going on? That's kind of
This is not Estonia, that's different.
yeah. I was wondering, like it's the Baltics, but kind of it doesn't feel like it at all. Like people actually ask questions. That's really strange. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about how did you find everything related to product market fit, and what was the journey actually finding it out? And maybe there were some pilots, something like you asked before, and some
Yeah.
ideas you had before.
So actually, I would kind of add this to the marketing good product. It's the same story pretty much, kind of, and really, it's also kind of connected to the turning point. So it's gonna be a combined answer. Yeah.
Hey, thank you for coming. First of all, my question is about the chicken and egg story of software as a service business. So you get the product with the first version, there's no traction at that point. How do you get the traction first to get more traction and more traction?
Yeah. Actually, it also kind of relates to this one. It's all the same story, but kind of the really first initial was a little bit different. So I'm gonna talk about that separately. You already asked one.
Yeah, but I still have a question.
Yeah, okay,
It's
but
gonna be a
let's.
quick one.
Okay.
Just about the priorities. How did you figure out which road to take?
Okay.
Priorities
This is going to be also kind of a short answer because we cheated. All right, anyone else? You had?
Yes, I think you should get one like really product development focused question as well.
Okay.
What's your rules for killing features?
Okay. I'm really bad at it, by the way.
I think everybody is.
So that's killing existing features.
Yeah, you have something that works on your product, but then you decide, hey, this should go.
Yeah, everyone knows you should do it, but no one actually kind of really does it, except for Google, and then everyone is mad. Okay.
How did you kickstart the sales? I'm wondering what were the main sales channels that you used at the beginning?
Yeah, I'll put the +1 here, but it's kind of with an asterisk because kind of during the time I was there, we never actually kind of really figured it out, which is kind of really interesting for a sales tool.
Yeah, delivery.
Delivery?
So customer sales strategy and delivery. So it's crucial at the beginning to work, for example, in Estonia and then in the Baltics, or after Estonia you move straight forward to the US. So if you're selling somewhere far from your headquarters, then you also need to take care about all the SLAA levels and all these things.
Ocean. Yeah, I have some stories about that, all right?
I have a question about you and your co-founders. What was your relationship originally? Were you friends or colleagues? How did that affect the course of your startups, or just Pipedrive?
Okay. Their profile. Okay.
How long it took from zero to break even? No, from start to break even. Then you decided to employ new employee 6.
Okay. People in the back, like you chose to be in the back.
And persistent. That's what I do for work.
Okay.
Anyway, your most favorite feature of the product, probably that you came up, just add somewhere, or maybe you can just answer. The best feature in your product that you love.
Yeah, it's the email integration. Well, it's because I was in a position where I could influence a lot how I used my email every day. So kind of people were kind of building this kind of email tool into Pipedrive, and I had a lot of influence over it. So kind of it ended up being my perfect email client. So it was kind of, for me personally, that was really cool.
So, you know, there's the Facebook Live happening, so some people are having watch parties. So I'm actually asking for a friend. When you have money in your bank account more than you can spend, do you lose motivation to actually move on forward, taking in mind that you already are saying you're retired?
So kind of personally?
I don't know, not personally.
So I mean, kind of, is it? Yeah, I understand that, but so the question wasn't about the company having so much money, but kind of me personally having enough money to not be motivated.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I actually don't.
Yeah, that's a really good topic, actually. All right.
I have two questions. The first one is about culture. So what makes a good culture for such a huge company?
Okay.
And the second one is about your angel investment and about the policy that you have in terms of how to find or source the best founders.
Okay. Okay. So I'm running out of space. Okay.
How did you validate the features are needed? Actually, you ran some usability tests or something like that. Can you tell maybe a bit more about that?
Okay. So I'm gonna.
Probably something around killing features or adding features. Like
Yeah, and also kind of prioritizing. So I'll put the +1 here, and again we cheated, but okay. So you already asked.
He said personally.
Okay, good.
About the co-founders, so you were 5
Yeah.
So how you manage to work for these 8 or 9 years, except of the sauna going, but still it's really hard, 5 co-founders to work and make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the strategy which works in the long run?
Okay, I'll put the plus one here. Kind of, maybe I should start answering, and then kind of if we still have time, I'll put down more because there's a long list. Okay, so early structure. You said kind of 50-ish people. We started having departments pretty early. So we had a support department, a kind of a product department, engineering, and these were separate, and they're still separate. I think it's a good idea to keep them this way because then it creates a nice tension between them, which can kind of be nerve-wracking at times, but I think it's beneficial. And we restructured a lot during these years. So kind of if sometimes I try to angel invest, and kind of the company asks me kind of how can you help? And it's like, yeah, one thing I can do is restructure because I've done kind of quite a few of these over the years, and they can be painful. So we restructured the engineering and product kind of like almost every year or every 2 years, and based on needs. Kind of based on pains, it's really difficult to give you a formula of kind of now do it this way or that way. But when it grew so big, so first time things broke down for me when I had kind of 8 directs, people reporting to me, and I thought, kind of everyone saying that you shouldn't have this many is kind of lying. They just don't know what they're doing. And then I got kind of one more and everything broke down and nothing worked anymore. And it was like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. So we started kind of creating these mid-level manager roles. And at first it was kind of really tricky and difficult, but kind of over time it got maybe a little bit better. But it is a complicated problem which doesn't have a good formula. So you need to look at your organization, kind of look at your kind of needs and problems, and then kind of find a way to solve it by first kind of identifying what you're trying to achieve. So what is it that you want this group of people to do better, what do you want to achieve, and then kind of try to come up with a good organizational structure this way. Because that kind of works better. Sometimes it just kind of happens, and kind of we did that as well. Kind of sometimes just kind of let some structure happen, and kind of that usually didn't end up well. So kind of trying to identify your need first, whatever that is at that particular moment. Communication is not working, or kind of stuff is slowing down, or kind of people are unhappy, and then kind of figuring out, okay, if we made that change and kind of change that structure, would that make it better? And then do it, and then kind of also try to come back and identify, did it help or not? Because oftentimes kind of people make changes and then kind of don't really evaluate if it was a good change or not, and never kind of make changes because someone just says, yeah, I should have a different structure. If stuff is working, don't change it. But yeah, in the end, every company is different. It's really difficult to give you a good kind of formula on how to do it. First devs, kind of we were cheating because kind of we started hiring from the previous companies right away. So kind of many of the early people that started working at Pipedrive as employees were also kind of employees from the earlier startups. So we knew them, we knew how to work with them, and kind of for me going from coding myself to kind of telling the first developer to kind of start coding was kind of really natural because we had done it before. If you don't have that benefit, it can be really tricky. I don't even know kind of where to start with that. Kind of probably it's good if you can find someone that you know. If you don't, then kind of try to get some references, kind of someone to recommend, because it's kind of the first hire is really tricky. And the first couple will kind of define so much of the company going forward. So yeah, we cheated. When did we realize that? What's the question? Kind of when was the
When did you realize that there will be a success, and what decisions led to that success?
So before going to the accelerator, we had 100 companies total, 100 customers, And during the interviews, they asked, kind of, what do you need to do in order to get 100 new companies every month? And we were getting 10 new every month, and kind of we said, kind of, you're out of your minds. Kind of, it's not possible. By the end of the accelerator, we started getting 100 new companies every month, and kind of probably that was the point where it was like, okay, there's something to it. And then kind of sometime later, when we hit 1,000 companies total and profitability, I was like, that might even work. But before that, there were kind of, for the product market fit. So probably I should kind of tell that story of all of these. So what happened was we had the product ready, and kind of the people that used it, the few, they actually liked it. But kind of it was really difficult to get it to grow. So it was global from the start. It's, kind of the second customer was from the US, so kind of it was open to the world, but it just kind of wasn't growing. And whatever we did, it didn't make any difference. And kind of we worked really hard for months, made changes to kind of the marketing, to the product, kind of, and nothing worked. Nothing actually moved the needle. And then one of the founders, Ragnar, who was the energy bunny in the group, kind of he went to Silicon Valley, spent a couple of months there, and got us into this accelerator. And during that time, we figured out that kind of the product was actually fine. There was product market fit, and kind of we kind of knew that because the people using it, they liked it. But we had kind of constructed some artificial barriers for people to enter the product. So the website was beautiful, but it had way too many text on it, kind of really, really long text, kind of too many buttons, too many options, kind of it was difficult to kind of really understand what you need to do on that website. So kind of go sign up. Many people didn't. Then on the way we had a plan that you needed to choose before you signed up, and kind of people had no idea which plan they needed, so kind of they couldn't make up their mind on the left. Even after that, when they got into the product, they had to kind of do a lot of setup before they got to add their first deal, and that was preventing people from seeing the kind of ease of use and getting to the aha moment. So a lot of people dropped off from there, and we fixed all of these things, and really didn't change the product at all by kind of the first run experience, and that really helped. So the conversion went up, kind of more people started using it. We also kind of ran an AppSumo campaign where kind of we got the critical mass to kind of 300 paying companies, and from there this kind of flywheel started going where kind of people liked it, told their friends, the friends signed up, and kind of this started going faster and faster. So beyond this kind of 300 companies, kind of everything kind of fell into place, and pretty soon we started kind of adding several hundred every month, and then kind of thousands every month of new companies, and then yeah, there's this kind of history. So this that was kind of the turning point. It was also kind of understanding that it was really easy. Well, it wasn't really easy, but it was kind of totally possible even 9 years ago to find really good designers and product people and developers in Estonia to build such a SaaS product, but kind of the marketing experience wasn't really there. So no one had done something like that, where kind of this fully global, really micro B2B self-service type thingy, how to get it to grow from Estonia, and kind of required us to go to Silicon Valley, go to this accelerator, kind of get this kind of learning from these people. I think these days you don't kind of really need it anymore, but back then it was necessary. Pivot or persist? That's a tricky one. So with Pipedrive, we never really had to do it because we were really sure pretty early on that kind of what we're building is the right thing, and kind of we just kind of needed to keep at it or just give up and kind of just drop it. We didn't even have a good idea kind of what to pivot to, but obviously kind of after 2 years of struggling to get it to work and kind of not seeing any growth and running out of money, and it was kind of pretty difficult. Obviously there was kind of moments of like, oh shit, like what do we do now? Luckily, the answer was kind of send someone to Silicon Valley and figure the shit out. But I don't think there's a good formula to kind of really figure it out. So many companies that are successful today are results of really strange pivots. Kind of take Slack or Twitter or whatever. Many good stories of companies struggling, pivoting, and kind of you have Slack all of a sudden. But then there's also kind of really good stories of people persisting, and then kind of many years later, suddenly, boom, like you have Pinterest. So it's kind of, you never know. And I don't know how to kind of determine it. Kind of sometimes you kind of look at Shark Tank and kind of there's people that have been building something for the last 15 years and kind of they're still at it and they've lost their kind of house and family and relatives and old friends and kind of they're still building it. And maybe that at that point kind of it's time to stop. So persistence is good, but kind of there's some limit to it. But I don't have a good experience myself. So never actually went through a pivot, so don't really know what I'm talking about. This kind of really initial traction was all done by hand. So once we had something that I considered to be okay to show to other people, and obviously the two salespeople in the company were like, oh my God, like you can't be serious, you're not gonna release this shit to people. And I was like, nope. Beta goes up, it's kind of going to be kind of available to everybody. Was a good time, so everyone was embarrassed. And we luckily knew a lot of salespeople. So we had a really good own personal network and kind of having 5 founders plus the founding investor, the one that kind of put in a lot of money in the beginning. Well, wasn't that a lot of money kind of if you think these days, but back then it was a lot of money and all of his savings. So he was kind of a sales guru in Estonia. So kind of the combined network of all the salespeople and Ragnar kind of was big enough that we could just kind of contact people one by one and kind of force them to try Pipedrive. So this kind of, the first initial traction came from just like our head of marketing back then was Andrus, and kind of he called it hand-to-hand combat, where kind of he just kind of went one by one and kind of we forced people to kind of use it. Priorities and understanding if you're kind of building the right thing. As I said, we cheated because kind of the two founders that were on the sales side, Timo and Urmas, they had been doing sales consultancy for more than 10 years. So they had been talking to thousands of salespeople and kind of thousands of companies, tens of thousands of salespeople over these 10 years. So they had this kind of digest in their heads of kind of so many kind of thousands of hours of research. They had such a good understanding of what salespeople need and don't need. They usually knew it better than the salespeople themselves. So for many years, it was kind of really easy to kind of prioritize and figure out what the features were needed because kind of we just kind of plucked it from the heads of Timo and Urmas. So it was kind of a matter of just getting it out of their heads. So in the first couple of years, we didn't really do kind of any of the things that a modern company kind of usually does these days of kind of user research and testing things out and any of that. Like we just didn't have to, which was kind of useful because we could move so much faster. But then later, it also was that much more difficult to kind of implement these things in the company. So it kind of there was some resistance to kind of okay, now we start doing it the proper way. But yeah, that was how we kind of got around that problem. Prioritizing still kind of even then, after the first couple of features where kind of it was very clear cut what to build, and kind of after that it got complicated. And it remained complicated forever, so kind of I don't think it kind of ever gets easier. Just kind of need to fight it out and go to the sauna and beat each other up. Killing features, as I said, I'm terrible at that. I'm really bad. I'm kind of nostalgic and kind of I don't want to piss off any users ever. So even if we had kind of a really small group using something, I still didn't want to kill something. I remember one distinct one, kind of being in the Microsoft building. It was an Outlook plugin that we had to kill. And it was quite painful, even if kind of no one was really using it. Kind of the 10 people that were, they were vocal. And it took a lot of effort. I think it's kind of, it's needed and kind of we should do it. Kind of don't be like me. So kill more features instead of adding them. It's like, I really think it's kind of one of the biggest problems of most startups is kind of they do see that kind of there's a bunch of features in their kind of product already that kind of not too many people are using, but kind of they're adding new ones. Yeah, not always a good idea. So sometimes getting rid of some and kind of making things easier and simpler probably would be a better idea, but kind of it's not easy. When it comes to distribution, it's kind of really good to be from Estonia because you don't have a market at all. Kind of if you're trying to do kind of a self-service micro B2B thingy that we built, we knew that kind of there's going to be 1,000 customers and that's going to be it. That's your total market. So it was in English day one, kind of global credit card, anyone could sign up, and we never went kind of market by market. We went global day one, and I think now, maybe 10 years later, they've started to do a little bit of kind of local marketing and stuff like that, but it was really global all the time, which was maybe harder in the beginning to get things going. Maybe if we had picked one country, say, I don't know, Sweden or Germany or Latvia to go, now we kind of make it happen here, maybe would have made some things easier. But in the end, I think the global aspect was beneficial, and we discovered markets that otherwise wouldn't have made any sense at all. For example, there's some really strange connection between Estonia and Brazil. Somehow, kind of one is kind of really tiny and up in the north, and the other one is really big and in the south. But there's some connection. Brazil ended up being the second biggest country for Pipedrive in terms of customers. So how did that happen? Kind of, no one still understands fully. But if we had been going kind of by logic or by country, kind of Brazil would have been kind of the number 100 to go to. But since it was global, they just happened. And to this day, I think Brazil is kind of the second biggest and is bigger than Germany or France, or kind of like, in many ways it doesn't make any sense, but kind of, yeah, money is money. Co-founder profile. So basically, yeah, out of the 5, we had 2 groups. We had the 2 salespeople that had been doing sales consultancy together for more than 10 years. They also kind of sold books door to door in the US, so kind of they knew each other for forever. And then the other 3 were kind of myself and the other Martin and Ragnar. And we had been doing these kind of startups together for many, many years as well. So we met at the Estonian daily newspaper, and then kind of did the dogs and cats together, and then built some kind of project management tool together, which also failed, and then kind of started building Pipedrive. So these 2 groups, it was good because kind of not everyone was totally new. So kind of we had this kind of strong relationships, and then even though we didn't kind of really know each other before, kind of there had been a connection, a slight connection between us before, but kind of that really helped. The profiles were kind of really different, so kind of 2 kind of sales consultant types, kind of doing all kinds of interesting things. Like for example, we did firewalking because both of them were firewalking instructors. So so that was interesting, and a lot of sales experience and a lot of experience kind of hiring people. They also had been doing kind of hiring consultancy and stuff like that. So that was useful. And then myself and Tyler, the other Martin, we were kind of technical. We were able to build stuff. A good thing about Tyler was kind of he could actually kind of design in CSS kind of right there. So we also kind of cut our development kind of a lot shorter because he could just sit down and kind of code how things looked right away without kind of doing Photoshop or anything in between. So so that was useful. And then Ragnar was the energy bunny who kind of doesn't act Estonian at all. Kind of he doesn't have any filters, any kind of barriers, and just kind of goes. And kind of this combination of these things kind of really helped us get going. And as I said, without any one person in that group, Pipedrive probably kind of would have failed really quickly.
So how do you manage to work with them for 8 or 10 years? So it's really hard.
It is, and kind of people started to leave as well. As I said, kind of we started at 5, and then kind of Ragnar left, I think, kind of 5 years in, and then kind of Tyro started kind of taking less and less of a role, and then Urmas got sick, so kind of he kind of stepped aside a little bit.
Is it because of other co-founders, or is it just left?
So very different reasons. So Ragnar probably got bored because kind of there wasn't a fire kind of every day anymore. So the company was too big and boring for him. Kind of he needed to go and kind of start some new ones. So kind of different reasons. So yeah, kind of the group got smaller, and we also we spread out pretty quickly. So kind of we opened the California office on kind of the end of the second year, and I moved to California. Then I spent 1 year there alone. Then kind of Timo and Urmas kind of joined me next year, but then kind of a year after I moved back to Tallinn. So kind of we were always spread out, and then kind of by the time Timo moved back to Tallinn, then I moved to Lisbon. So kind of we were spread out and kind of in charge of different areas. So kind of left a lot to our own devices. So kind of we didn't bother each other too much. Because, for example, kind of people are different, but kind of I really like to argue, and Urmas really like to argue, and we could argue for hours on end. Kind of like, and other people would think that kind of we're really close to actually physically killing each other. But then by the end of the day, we would go home and babysit each other's kids. But wasn't kind of maybe the most efficient way to do things. So it was good that kind of for most of the time we were physically in different places, so we just couldn't argue for hours on end. But whenever we met, we just kind of kept arguing. So yeah, this kind of distributed nature kind of made many things harder, but also kind of some things easier, I guess. But it's kind of never easy. But then again, if you don't have this many co-founders, then you need to start hiring people earlier. And we could kind of spread that among the founders, and kind of because you're a founder, you have more skin in the game. Kind of maybe you tolerate more shit and kind of be more persistent, even if it's more difficult compared to kind of people that are hired. And if that doesn't work out, then it's kind of easier to break up. I don't know, but yeah, it kind of worked for us. But it's as I said, a lot of luck and a lot of sauna. Break even. Who asked that? Okay, so what was the idea of the question?
From zero to break even. How when you decided not to split money but to hire new employee?
So it was interesting.
Still not reached this point.
We reached it kind of at some point once, yes. So it was kind of coming back from this accelerator. We couldn't raise money, so we were growing faster, but kind of Silicon Valley investors kind of weren't impressed at all. So we couldn't raise money after AngelPad. We came back to Tallinn. We worked for a winter, and we got to 1,000 customers and break even. And at that moment, we had the decision to make. Do we keep going like this, keep staying profitable, grow slowly, hire when we can, and keep doing it like this? Or do we go out and try to raise money again? And kind of we sat down with the founders, looked at each other, and was like, hell yeah, we're going to raise money again. And at that moment, people actually wanted to give us money. So we managed to raise like, $750,000 without actually meeting the investors face to face. I think these days it's more common. But back then it was kind of, oh, like we just had the Skype call and kind of money is coming. But the numbers looked really good. There was a lot of growth, and we didn't need the money, so kind of many people wanted to give it to us. But that, as far as I know, is also kind of the only time in the history that we were actually break even. Because that's what happens when you kind of start raising money from investors. It's really difficult to kind of not use it and then keep raising. Maybe these days it's easier. Back then it was kind of, you got onto that roller coaster and kind of it was kind of expected. So kind of put a lot more money into growth and then grow faster, and then raise more money, and that's definitely what was happening to us. Not complaining, because it was kind of working like clockwork. We raised more money, hired more people, grew more quickly, opened more offices, put more money into marketing, and things grew faster, and kind of it just kept going. It worked like a machine. But
yeah, so you just talked about raising money investors, but in general it means that as soon as you go into this roller coaster, as you mentioned, you have to be ready from a lot of pressure from investors, isn't it right?
Yes. And kind of the more the investor looks like a VC rather than an angel, the more pressure there is, and the more American they are, the more pressure there is. We took really good care picking ours, because in the previous startup, in the dogs and cats, kind of we didn't take good care of picking the investors, and it was kind of turned out really, really bad, because it didn't just go bankrupt, but kind of it was a public fight between the founders and the investors in the media, which was kind of awful. So we knew that we needed to find a really good fit with the investors, not only kind of them giving us money, but also kind of making sure that there's a culture fit, that they understand kind of small business B2B, that they understand that it's possible to run a company from Estonia, kind of all these things, and kind of be a nice person to kind of interact with and so forth. So it took us always kind of many times longer than usual to raise the money that we did every single time, because kind of we just didn't want to work with any investor that was willing to give us money. But there is a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure to get stuff done, and there is a lot of pressure to kind of spend the money and then kind of raise another round. So our investors, I think, were somewhat better than your average VC that would have probably pushed us even harder into kind of unsustainability. Ours were actually kind of really conscious of sustainability. So not like your company doesn't have to be profitable, but it needs to be at least mathematically possible. A lot of the companies out there, they would just kind of burn so much money at whatever cost to get new customers, get growth, and kind of get the new investment and burn again, without ever considering that kind of if they now stopped investing that much, then the company would just kind of quickly die. So we never did that. I guess it's kind of some Estonian nature and kind of picking the investors correctly. So kind of it never got that crazy. So all the time we were like, it was possible for us to go and be profitable if we wanted to. It just kind of happened that we never wanted to.
How long usually took this investment round? You said longer, but how it's usually?
Because there were so many different rounds, it's difficult to say, but it took months and months and months. Except for that really first one, the 750, that was kind of like really quickly, a couple of weeks and it was done. But the rest were really difficult, especially the A round, the actual first kind of official VC A round, which was more difficult because kind of we weren't growing that fast at that moment. We were also running out of money, so we needed money, and of course then no one wants to give you money. So that was kind of difficult, and that took probably more than a year. The rest were slightly easier, because then after that one we started raising when we kind of didn't desperately need, and then it was, that was kind of faster. But it took kind of many months and kind of a lot of hard work from Timo and Dominic and kind of everyone involved in money raising. I was never too much involved in that.
Is it still not break even? So it's still running on the same from one money to next money?
So we're kind of always close to profitability. So it's not like it could not be profitable if we ever kind of stopped hiring. But kind of, I haven't been with the company for a year, so maybe they might be profitable by now. But kind of for the time I was there, it was always a calculated kind of structural thingy work. Okay, if we hired slower, then it could be profitable. But if we hired a little bit faster, we would kind of burn some money, but kind of then we would grow that much faster. And then every time, pretty much it was kind of decided to just grow faster.
So it was all on hiring, not on marketing?
Well, marketing is a part of it, and kind of having 6 offices and all of that stuff. But yeah, it's mostly, at the SaaS business, it's kind of marketing and salaries, kind of nothing else much.
Why do you need so many offices?
Talent. We were never afraid to kind of go where the talent was to get the best people. So if you need kind of a really, really good kind of world-class finance officer, you need to go to New York. Like, there's no one in Estonia that has any sort of idea how to run this kind of global operation where you have customers in 190 countries, and kind of how to even get the accounting correctly for the US kind of IRS. It's just can't do that from Estonia. And again, kind of with marketing, we had to open an office in London because otherwise it didn't make any sense. Couldn't find the talent that we needed in Tallinn because there just wasn't that much experience there. And also because Tallinn is getting pretty crazy in terms of hiring, and we couldn't hire engineers fast enough, we couldn't hire support and sales fast enough. Then we opened the office in Lisbon, where the competition wasn't that strong back then, at least. Now it's getting hot there as well, but it's still better than Tallinn, I think, in terms of accessibility to talent.
There's still a few questions on the whiteboard.
Yeah, we still have them. So.
Martin, can I ask, do you think it's changing this with offices in every location there is people, because it's getting more and more popular to work remote? Do you think today that it will be possible to do a different structure than that?
Everything is possible. I'm kind of a really strong believer in offices, but that's my personal opinion. So for a big part of my life, I also worked remotely, and then I worked in offices mostly for Pipedrive, and I prefer offices. But of course, yeah, if you have 6 or 7 offices, kind of a big part of the work will become remote-like anyway. So you still have the problems. So it's tricky. I don't know. It depends on the company. There are some companies that are able to do that at scale and be fully remote. But I also believe that it's better than to be fully remote so that you don't have any offices at all and everyone is kind of working from wherever, rather than have a mix in between.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Money and motivation. So always I would like to say I was never motivated by money, but then again, of course I was. But that wasn't the biggest motivator, and from some point onwards, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't change your life that much. But I was more motivated, why I was always founding these companies or joining these really early stage companies was the fact that I didn't want to work for anyone else. So that was the bigger thing, where I wanted to be my own boss, or at least be close enough to the levers that I felt that I could do what I wanted. So that was the bigger motivation always. And if you look at some of the most successful and more driven people, look at Jeff Bezos or you look at Elon Musk, clearly they could never use any of the money that they have in a significant way, but they keep going, and there's completely different things that are motivating them. So I also believe that if you're just really fully motivated by money, you might not get it, and even if you do, then you're not going to be happy. And if you're motivated by other things, then money can be a side product of that. Culture, oh my God, it's a big question. So we took it really seriously at Pipedrive. We were quite obsessed with hiring. We had a pretty strong understanding of who we wanted in the company from the beginning. And then at some point we wrote down our 6 core values and made sure that everyone knew them when hiring. We were checking against them, trying to enforce them as much as possible later. And generally making sure that we didn't have assholes in the company, and just to be surrounded with nice people. And nice people is a really way of saying it, but we had these 6 things that were written down, and actually people knew about them, and they were followed and checked against. And even kind of from the really early days, kind of we rejected really good engineers when they acted like people that we didn't want to be around. You spend most of your waking life in the office, so you better kind of like these people. So that was kind of always a driving force. And we very rarely broke that kind of pattern, and kind of whenever we did, we regretted early. I'm not saying that we didn't make any mistakes, but kind of it was really clear every time we made that mistake that kind of, yeah, that wasn't a good decision. But kind of out of the 600, I think kind of good 99% have been picked really, really properly. So.
What are those 6 rules that you said?
It might take a little bit too long to go through all of them, but it was kind of mostly to do with kind of what kind of a person you are in terms of kind of what is motivating you, kind of how you live your life, are you an asshole or not, and kind of are you getting stuff done or not. So kind of we never were, yeah, Pipedrive is a family and kind of we just came together because we like each other, but kind of it was always a business, so kind of you also needed to do work and kind of get stuff done at the same time. So kind of not being an asshole should not be an excuse for not doing work. And kind of all together, these 6 things kind of, I think, made a really nice kind of combo. And kind of, yeah, that kind of worked. And I believe that is the core part of the culture, especially kind of when you have more offices, then kind of making sure that kind of course, the offices will be different in many ways, but making sure that the people share these 6 values was kind of crucial to having them actually be compatible. So kind of now when you let the Lisbon office and the Tallinn office together, they kind of are compatible, which can be surprising, but it's working.
Perfect. I'm so glad to see that there are so many questions today. Please feel free to stay around. You can still try to bug Martin for some time while he's here. There are also some Printify people that you can chat with, and let's give a huge round of applause for Martin.
Still one question.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Yes, I'm one of those 90,000 users currently. We started just recently. Office in Malaysia and Kuala Lumpur.
Oh, okay.
Thanks. Basically, we selected 2 from Estonia originally, but